thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And we have an amazing guest on our show today. This fellow has been a friend of ours for quite some time, but predominantly our Kimmies. So I'm not going to steal the limelight, or I'm not going to try and introduce Jamie, because I don't think that I'll do a very good job. But I'd like to welcome Jamie Milne from Jamie Milne Training here onto the Up for a Chat show. And Kimmy, over to you, because you know this hunk of spunk and you've been training with him, you've worked with him, and we've got some amazing things to talk about here that we just know our listeners are going to be so inspired by. So over.
And honestly, Jamie, you're right, Karen. He is very good eye candy. He is wonderful to look at and certainly wonderful to be trained by. But being a fellow Kiwi, there's a lot of wonderful connections. And Jamie, I'd just love you if you could explain to everybody, give us a little bit about your past, how you got to be in Australia, your growing up, and how you got to being where you are today. Give us the history.
Hey ladies, how are you? Look, my name is Jamie. I was born in the beautiful Rotorua, the Bay of Plenty of the North Island. Most people that have travelled around the world, Rotorua leaves a special little mark on most people that have been there, and it's usually got to do with the ambient smell of kind of rotten eggs, socks. I've heard other descriptions about Rotorua, but most people that have been to Rotorua know what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful little place. So I was born there, went into the Navy very young, so spent a number of years in the military in the Navy, which led me and sort of stuck a bit of wanderlust in my veins and got me travelling, got me going around the world and having a good look around. I danced with a bit of bad lifestyle choices and blew out to a significant 116 kilos, I think was the biggest. 112 kilos was the biggest I got to. So made a few bad choices there as I went into my late 20s, which led me to a career, led me to some self-education and some reflection, realization, however you want to put it, knowing that I had to make a shift and making a lot of bad choices. And the short of the long was, as I started to do my own research and use myself as a bit of a guinea pig, I developed this enthusiastic passion for all things movement and health and wellness and this full spectrum sort of health literacy approach. And I just got relentless with learning about the body and what fuels the body and all the lifestyle choices and things like that. So I basically, over a number of years, I've been in the fitness industry about 14 years, but over this time of traveling and growing and learning, I entered the fitness industry, and as a fitness professional, a strength and conditioning coach and a sports psychologist. And I ended up coming to Australia, spending quite a number of years here and having the good fortune to open my own facility here on the beautiful Sunshine Coast, the one place I wanted to live and continue my professional career. So here I am, getting involved.
And it's an amazing setup as well. But Jamie, you've missed a few little things, and I just know that that you what I love about you is that you openly share. Without saying it too crassly, you're a bit of a rat bag, and like you said briefly there, you lost your way a little bit. You danced with the other side. I just would love to know, because many wives and women listen to the show and love it when we have a gentleman on and he's talking. What was the switch that took you from wanting to keep on a path of self-destruction into a lifestyle? Because that sounded so easy, the way you just shared your story, but I'm sure there was some amazing pivotal points that created that shift for you. Could you explain any of those for us?
Yeah, no problem at all. I think probably the biggest one, the catalyst for change was I was overseas for it. So I was a ship's diver in the Navy, and when I left the military, I was a glistening, lean 75 kilos, dripping wet, so, and relatively fit, and could sort of hold my own. And I left, and I was kind of going through a stage of rebellion. You know, you end up almost institutionalized. I went into the Navy at 16 and a half, signed the dotted line for 20 years at the age of 17, and only served 7. But you learn, you know, I suppose it's like being a school teacher. The bell goes, or you know, being at school, the bell goes, you go here, the bell rings again, you get a break. You know, the bell goes again, you put your hand up if you want to talk, and you don't talk when it's not your turn. So you become, as they, you know, you lead a life of uniformity. So when I left the military, I grew my hair, and I got, you know, a nose ring and covered in tattoos from knee to nipple, and decided to take drugs and eat bad food, and, you know, all these things. And it was almost a real hedonistic lifestyle that I led. And over about 9 months, I went from 75 kilos and managed to, as I mentioned earlier, get to $1.12. And I essentially got pregnant on beer and food and bad lifestyle choices. I just got massive, just absolutely swelled up, and then, you know, then starts the self-loathing, and my self-worth plummeted, and I mean, the list goes on. And when you can't you don't like who you see when you're trying to brush your teeth and have a shave in the morning, it's one of those things that just snowballs and continues to you continue to go down this really dark rabbit hole. And what happened was, I'm not 100% sure, but it was I think it was my grandfather's 75th birthday or something like that, 70th or something along those lines. And this was at the time sort of pre Facebook and social media, so no one really knew what was going on back in those days. You ladies wouldn't remember this, obviously. Sort of more my era, and there was no Facebook, no nothing. And so you'd be sending letters home, things like that. Nobody knew I had, you know, ended up in this current state. So I came home back to New Zealand for my grandfather's birthday. And now my grandfather was a man, and I'm sure, you know, many people can relate that are listening. He was like a mentor, somebody I really looked up to. He did his last marathon in his 70s. You know, he refereed football for forever and a day, and he was a well-respected athletic man in our community back home, and I always wanted to be like him. And I was coming back for his birthday, and I remember heading out to the family farm, and we were all sitting down having, you know, we'd got through the real awkward greetings and hadn't seen everybody for a long time. And you know, I was literally the big white elephant in the room. I was a big brown bundle of joy, big brown elephant. And we were all sitting down having dinner. And I remember my grandfather looking at me, and just out of nowhere, he just was sort of staring me up and down. He hadn't really said much, and this was a guy that I just absolutely loved and respected. And out of nowhere, he just looked at me and he said, "You look disgusting. Like, what have you been doing? Like, I can't even recognize you. Where's my grandson?" And I remember thinking, "Oh God, did he just say that? Like, in front?" No, sure. Oh, was he talking to me? You know, and you kind of sit there, you know, that really awkward feeling you get when you just want the ground to open up and swallow you, and, you know, you don't want to come crawling out of there. And I kept thinking, man, and then he kept going, you know, and going. And, you know, in between mouthfuls of oxtail stew and white bread rolls and about a dozen Heinekens, I, you know, could feel myself getting all emotional and defensive. I wanted to say something, and he just wouldn't really stop. So I sort of politely excused myself and dusted off the crumbs and the sweat, and started picking up the plates and stuff, and made my way into the kitchen, and just totally lost it. Like, my stepmom came in, and, you know, I was getting the rub on the lower back. You know, don't worry about it. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean to say those things. And I remember thinking to myself, man, he meant every single word. You know, he is one person that, you know, a spade's a spade. It's definitely not a, you know, a pitchfork or a shovel. It is a spade. And, you know, I promised myself, and I remember thinking, when I get up in the morning, man, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a 5K run or something, a couple of Ks. And I remember promising myself that I would never look back. And when I got up in the morning for the run, I think the 5K took me about 2 hours or something like that. I can't remember, but I literally, that was the catalyst. And that was a really, really long time ago. And after hearing those powerful words from somebody that I loved and cared about so much, it was exactly what I not wanted to hear, but it was exactly what I needed to hear at that time to make that shift.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when we have people we love be honest with love. But I don't know if that sounded very loving, but it was certainly something that got you changing. But Jamie, you've gone from 112 kilos into a fitness machine. You have done some extraordinary things, attempting world records. You've run the length of New Zealand. You've run around Australia. You've done the length of the UK. Tell us how that journey unfolded and the reasoning behind what took you into doing extreme events.
Okay, before you start, Jamie, Kim, did you just say he's done the length of New Zealand?
3 times.
Yep.
3 times? Yeah. Okay, I got to hear this. This blows my mind, this ultra marathoning. Because Kim's one of them, and I said, why would you do that?
Yeah.
So I'm hanging. This is going to be amazing. Thank you. But I just let everybody else know that you did hear the right thing. Okay, good.
And there's other things he's done as well. You wait for it. You can tell us all of them, Jamie.
This is incredible.
I know.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't know.
You're a real life superhero. No wonder you're such a spunk.
I'm feeling flattered. I'm not going to get out of this room this afternoon. I'll be squeezing my way out of it. You guys are way too kind. Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing how you did that and why you decided to do it.
Totally.
Yeah. Look, it's really interesting. I don't know. I've recently turned 40, and I remember speaking to a good friend of mine, and I was saying, when people have midlife crises, and historically, especially blokes, it's off to go and get the Harley, or they jump out of planes, or they, to go on crazy scuba diving trips, and they travel the world and all this stuff. And when I reflect over my life, I think I've done all that shit for the last 20 years. I've come to the realization that my midlife crisis is an inside job. I'm looking at it's almost like all of these sort of events and feats of endurance that Kimmy was talking about, and all of these things have connected the dots and led me to this very point here today, where I don't know. It's like it's the material world, as we know it. It almost feels like I've got nothing to gain. Like it has nothing to give me anymore, and it's all like a self-realization journey, and the journey back to who I really am and where I'm from. And when somebody says, "Who is Jamie Milne?" I can start to speak with confidence and without ums and ahs, and talk about who I am and where I've been and my journey to this point. And I think spending, as Kim I would imagine would agree with me, when you spend a lot of time by yourself, which ultra marathons tend to do to you, you get to look inward a little bit, and you get to ask the tough questions. And as they say, if you want answers to anything in your life, solitude's a really good place to start. And I found that worked for me. In the early days, not so much. So when we were talking about running around New Zealand and the UK and things like that, it wasn't so much, I used it as a bit of escape. I was still running from things. I was running from my shadows. And as I've recently learned, as much as some of my shadows and my bad choices, have brought me shame, as a 40-year-old man now, I can sort of stand here and speak to people, and those shadows now have become my strength. And yeah, I'm very, very, very proud of that. So if you ask me what was driving me initially, I did 10 years of really long ultra marathons, and what I would fondly call journey running. the running through countries and going from A to B, which us blokes really, really like, whether we're in a car or on a bike or we're running or we're walking, we love the A to B. Go to Coles and get the broccoli and the almonds and come straight home. It's like, okay, good, I'm good with that. I can do that. So I really, really enjoy the journey running. And I used to do it in memory or memoriam of my grandmother, Mary, who played a massive part in my upbringing. I know I spoke earlier about my grandfather, but my grandmother was certainly a huge part of my upbringing. And so I have raised a lot of money in the past for dementia and Alzheimer's and related charities and organizations. And that was kind of my thing. I felt like I was repaying some of my poor choices. It was almost like my own version of karma. I was trying to find the yin to the yang and the balance, and I wouldn't say beating myself up, but it was all part of this mosaic or tapestry or whatever you want to call it. This is what I was doing. It was my journey over 10 years, and that was certainly driving me and motivating me to do these runs. From Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast. I ran through Western Australia, ran right around Tasmania, and as we mentioned, New Zealand a few times, and UK twice, and I still didn't really get the answers until recently. So yeah, God, I've waffled on a bit. Sorry about that.
I know, but it's quite powerful, and as Cindy said, it is an interesting journey, and I know the three of us would love to know. I mean, many of us have elders or people in our life that we adore or who have played a massive amount of a big role in our lives or had a massive impact in our lives. And many of us have done and made bad choices, but there's not many who would choose to run the length of New Zealand in honour of that 3 times, or run around Australia or run around the UK. So where's that mindset come from?
I don't know. Like, I think, I do kind of know. Sometimes it's hard to verbalize, but I think running, I think whatever it is, as they say, and I'm sure you ladies have heard it before, they say sometimes your pain leads you to your purpose. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And for me, I've never been a massive fan of running, but I just found, like many people, if I was feeling a bit of darkness, or I was feeling like, you speak to any semi-decent health professional out there, they will advise you and encourage you to get active. Or the feel-good hormones are released, and even at just a logical level, you just feel a little better. And it doesn't mean you got to chase a barbell around a room and do 642 burpees or anything crazy like that. It means just, as Cindy was discussing earlier, did you get up early? Did you go to the beach? As everybody had done something this morning? And it doesn't have to be arduous, but if you move that beautiful body of yours, you generally feel better. And I found in the early days, running for me was a way to get the needle going in the other direction, and sort of take me out of my little dark clouds, because I had a predisposition to poor mental health. I'd get very down on myself very easily, and I found running was a way to get the needle going in the other direction. And it all just kind of seemed to go along that trajectory. And in the early days, 5Ks became 10Ks, and 10Ks for a few months become 15Ks, and then lo and behold, next minute you're running through Western Australia. Yeah.
Run, Forrest, run.
That's pretty much the truth. Yeah, it's classic.
Tell us about Mary and the impact she had in your life, and why you decided then to raise so much money. How much money have you raised so far for all of your charities?
Oh, it's about close to 100 grand over the years. Yeah, and that is that. Oh, thank you very much. That's definitely a collaborative effort. I mean, I was obviously the initial drive, but the good thing is, when you do, as you guys would obviously know, and what you do in abundantly, is when you start doing some good things, it becomes infectious. You become like this really positive, good virus, and everybody wants a piece of it, and they love to get involved and do some good as well. So you kind of become a vessel for other good people to do good things, and that seems to be the flavour of what happened. But yeah, Mary was just amazing, like an absolutely beautiful lady, and two things she instilled in me from a very young age. And it was funny, it didn't really make much sense when I was younger. One was manners make the man, and I just got drilled with opening doors for ladies and don't walk in front of ladies when they're going into the shop, let them pass through, and there's pleases and thank yous, and knives and forks don't get crossed over together in the middle of the plate, and put them together nicely, and all this type of jazz. And being a young little rebel in Rotorua, it used to just annoy the hell out of me. And the other one was, she used to always say to me, always be nice, but I'm pretty sure she said take no crap. But I kind of changed those words a little bit as I got older and added a bit more colour to it. But she was that type of lady. She was just amazing, and a nurturer, and just absolutely beautiful. And unfortunately, was the disease of forgetfulness, Alzheimer's. She got early onset Alzheimer's when I was about 11 or 12. So, and then she fought a very, very long battle with Alzheimer's. And it's funny, I'm sure you guys have seen the movie The Notebook. I can't remember what the bloke's name is. No,
is it? No, it's not.
Ryan. Yeah, oh God, I can't remember his name, but I love the line when he says to the
Ryan
lady.
Gosling.
That's it, Ryan Gosling. So I watch it. He's a dreamboat. I've watched that movie once, and I just cannot watch it again, even though I love it. I just love it. But I watched that. Like, that was my grandparents, 100%, like a carbon copy. I watched my granddad, go to my grandmother every day in the hospital nursing home, and he would feed her meals, her lunch, her breakfast, her dinner, and till the day she took her last breath. And it was a really slow. It was 10 years, something like that. It was a really, really long time, 10 to 12 years.
So, Jamie, how old was she when that happened?
She was in her very, very late 50s, I think. So not quite 60, maybe like 57, 58. So she got the early onset dementia, and it started really subtly, as it does for others. Just little things, weird things. getting up to go to the housey or bingo in those days. At really odd hours, she'd be getting ready and getting up, and my grandfather would be like, "It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, where are you going?" And she was already halfway out the door. So the behaviour started to change, and the alarm bells started going off. So, and then it just got progressively worse. Although I will tell you a really nice story, and it always sort of warms my heart. When I went there one Christmas Day, and my grandfather was dressing up as Santa Claus, and this was in the very, very late stages, so almost a vegetative state. And my grandfather said, "Would you come down?" And and the guilt used to really, really hit me hard. Up until recently, because I disliked it. I really didn't like it, because she wouldn't recognise me, and I'd kind of think, why am I? This just upsets me, and I'm sure it upsets her. But I decided, I'll go with Granddad, because he got some bagpipers, because they're Scottish. They're from Scotland, Dunfermline in Scotland, and he had organised a couple of pipers to come into the home while he was Santa Claus. So whilst everybody was jumping on his knee and asking for presents and stuff, which I'm sure he would have really disliked, but they were all, having a bit of a social get together, and we were all sitting there, and there was cake, and there was all the Chrissy stuff. And my grandmother hadn't been responsive for such a long time. There's just no hellos, no anything, struggling to eat, all that type of jazz. And anyway, the piper come walking into the sort of the social area, and there were two of them. And of course, the old bagpipes kick in. I won't try and make a bagpipe sound, but anyway, the bagpipes start, and all of a sudden, my grandmother starts tapping her feet and clapping her hands. And we all just looked and were like, "Oh my God," and my grandfather said to me, and I remember him turning and looking at me and saying, "There you go, there's the power of music." And I will never ever forget that day. It was just absolutely amazing. So, and as it turns out, I've found out that I went to the dementia Alzheimer's research centre in Melbourne, and they've recently established that people that are living with these progressive stages of dementia, and that they do know what's going on, they just can't communicate that to people, to their loved ones. So, and that was interesting because way on back then, 97, 98, there was a prime example. So go figure.
I didn't realise that they, even though they couldn't communicate, that they knew what was happening around them. Because my thoughts are this, is that when they can't, go to the toilet by themselves, feed themselves, I know they stop eating. When they can't do those things, I go, what, have they reverted back to a baby? But I didn't know that they could continue to know exactly what's happening. But if they can't recall who you are, how are they remembering that? That's what I don't.
Yeah, I really don't.
Yeah, because
I found it very conflicting because I know in some cases that I think it's the synapse or something in the brain had pretty much shut down, and they'd almost become trapped in themselves. But then, we sat down and they were explaining, and they had just sort of cracked this new level of research. I got a grand tour of this, and they had virtual reality. So for carers, so if you were a carer, they put the virtual reality glasses and stuff on you, and you got to experience what it was like. And it was so confronting. You were in this big room, and you basically walked around a house in virtual reality, and the walls are moving, and you think you're going into you could hear the person in the background saying, "Okay, darling, it's time to go for a shower." And so you walk to where the shower is, but it's actually a cupboard where the vacuum cleaner is, and you're very disorientated, and it gives you a really confronting observation of what they go through. So if you're a carer or a family member, you can have a little bit more empathy and understanding. But they're really, Australia is leading the way with the research. They're doing a great job. Perhaps there's hope. Who knows?
Wow. You can only hope, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that you're doing, and we quickly discussed it before we started, and I'm oblivious to what it is. So why don't you explain to me, as well as everybody else out there that's listening, what the project is that you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. The project that I've been fortunate enough to take part in, we've sort of spoken a little bit about the world of the endurance athlete. And I've always been heavily fascinated and curious about the intangible drivers of an endurance athlete, and even not just an endurance athlete, but anybody that is suffering in any shape or form. And how do we get through that? Like, especially the intangible drivers, the stuff we can't see. Some people we'll call it motivation, drive, inspiration, or some of us may refer to it as human spirit. And for me, I've just been absolutely, excited and enthusiastic and curious about the human spirit, because I've been in a number of situations personally through running and through, adverse childhood. With the military, I've been involved with a couple of strenuous selection processes as an adult in my mid-30s. Maybe it was an early midlife crisis. I applied to the New Zealand SAS as a specialist service in a direct entry program, which allowed civilians to go through the selection process. And even during that 18 months of running a business and going back to New Zealand to fulfill these requirements, there were many times where I just thought, I'm not getting out of here alive. Like, this is horrendous. And, you know, it could be like the single mum raising 3 children and hasn't got much money, or it could be the poor bloke that can't get out of bed in the morning and can't open the curtains because he's riddled with mental health and mental illness. How do we get through these things, and what gets us out and what gets us moving when we're done, when we've got nothing left? And this has always fascinated me. And so I'm fortunate enough to have a few intelligent friends, one being a doctor and another one who just so happens to own a film company. And I spoke to them in depth about it, and we said, well, why don't we explore it? You know, why don't we create some content? Why don't we do a little documentary? And of course, the little brown boy, the little mischief boy in me gets all excited, and I'm like, oh God, yeah, let's do that. And then I thought, well, I turn 40 soon, so let's. And I thought, I'm a semi-decent runner, so why don't we tackle the 10 most difficult ultra marathons in the world? And so everybody, all those in favour say aye. Everyone's chucking their hands up and getting excited. And my friend, Dr. Kendall George, she is heavily involved with she's a midwifery is her specialty, but she's also an ultra marathon runner and a fitness enthusiast. So she said, oh, look, yeah, I've got great friends that are sports scientists at the University of the Sunshine Coast. And then this little thought activity just exploded into this 10-year documentary. So away we go, and we get some momentum, we get some traction. And I enrolled in registered for the world's toughest 100-mile trail race, which is 160 kilometers, and was in Hawaii, in Honolulu, up in the rainforest there, and it was called the Hurt 100, of which it has a cumulative elevation of loss and gain only a few hundred meters short of Mount Everest. And it's just all mud, roots, rocks, and that's it, you know, and cliffs up the back there in Honolulu. So that was the first series, in a 10-part series. We just literally finished filming a couple of weeks ago, and we started filming early last year. And the documentary is called Wairua Spirit, and Wairua in Maori, or in Indigenous New Zealand, basically means spirit. So we called the project Wairua Spirit. We had some ethically approved research conducted by the Sunshine Coast University about pain tolerance and mental toughness in direct relation to endurance athletes. But I mean, again, running is just the vessel. As I mentioned earlier, running is just a piece of this, you know, this tapestry, this alchemy of suffering and intangible drivers. As I was mentioning earlier, it can be related to anybody that's struggling and can't find a way out of whatever fog or funk that they're in. But it just so happens in this case it's running, but it certainly can be related to anything. So that's the latest project.
So tell me some things that happened not only to you but other people that were doing, you know, were on this voyage of killing their bodies. No, only kidding. Of doing what they did, because what you're doing is you're really stretching yourself. So I know that you're stretching your body, but have you got some really good stories that you can tell us about yourself or somebody else on this amazing voyage?
Yeah. Look, I've personally had a number of situations where I've really questioned, one, my sanity, and two, is it safe for me to continue? And that's a really hard question to ask yourself, because I really do believe, and I don't know if anybody else has quit on anything before, but I've quit a couple of times, and it really stings. And it's only up until recently I haven't been able to sort of let go of these things. It hasn't. I used to use the word it haunted me, but I don't think it really haunted me. I was just disappointed in myself for quitting. So I've really held a really tough line on that now. And so when you do find yourself questioning, you know, am I safe? Am I going to hurt myself? The human body, time and time again, reminds us of this, how, this complex biological system is just incredible. When the physicality runs out, then the spirit, the human spirit, kicks in and kind of goes, all rightio, I'll take it from here. And it really is amazing. And I know each and every one of us, including the listeners, would have, a similar story or a similar experience. And I think it's what we do at that point is the real interesting component. Sleep deprivation, pain, lack of fuel, food, hydration, all these things, they cause, trauma, various traumas. They, when the chips are stacked against you, but somehow, some way you continue to go. And that is, again, just a testament of the human spirit. I heard somebody mention at the point, and it stuck in my head, at the point of no return, when you absolutely feel like you have nothing left to give, you've only used 40% of your stuff. So at that point, you reflect at yourself and think, have I only used 40%? And that's a really confronting thought process.
So, Jamie, is it fair to say that you're using the physical body to see how far the human spirit can go?
Am I using the human body to? I suppose I am. That's my perception. So that's my. I suppose that's, yes. So sorry, Karen. Yes, you are right. I am personally. I am. Some of the other people, I suppose they don't. They could potentially have been thrust into that situation where they have no choice. I choose to put myself in these situations. And Kimmy mentioned earlier, I currently hold a world record for a physical activity. And I had also recently attempted one, both of which were very, very far on the cusp of what I thought was achievable, and well and truly on the outer limits of what I thought was achievable. And during these attempts, you get to experience this amazing phenomenon, which is the human spirit. But as mentioned, some people are put in that predicament or position without choice.
But I think it's fascinating, like when people are put in that position without choice, like, I think of myself in the Bali bombing, it was without choice. So I wasn't particularly present to what was happening. I was just, going through the motions, not myself. But the magic of what I'm hearing with what you're saying is that by choosing that, not just once, but over and over and over again, and it almost is akin to the people who find that edge through extreme sports too. It's almost like you're very present to it, you're very aware of it. And tell me, can you distinguish between the moment when the you that's here now disappears and that human spirit kicks in? Do you feel the changeover?
Oh, what a beautiful question. Oh, now I'm getting excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, you're speaking my language. Oh, my goodness.
Nice, Karen.
Yeah. Well played. Look, and also just before I waffle on again, I just want to acknowledge as well, Karen, I had heard your story a number of times, and it's just absolutely, incredible, remarkable. So just amazing. I get like 1,000 things run through my head at the same time. There is definitely a distinct moment where it kicks in, and I've felt it a number of times. And you do have to be in that position. It doesn't happen without it, without the suffering, without the duress. It doesn't come along, and you've got to go through the fatigue, the mental anguish, you've got to go through everything, and to where you really just feel like you cannot hold on. And it's just beyond that point. And it really is when you have had enough, like when you are absolutely done, when the suffering is too much, and it's at that point that we make that decision. And I do firmly believe that majority of us, the lion's share of people that are in this position, they do give up and they're done. And of course, what you focus on grows. You know, as soon as you're done, then that's what happens. But if you can get through, if you can just hold on, my God, just hold on and go just that little bit further, just that little extra inch, hold on that extra 30 seconds, 15 seconds on the other side of that is where the magic lies. And I've read a book, and I'm not sure if you guys have, the Rise of Superman. And it's a really, really interesting book. And it pretty much encapsulates what we're just talking about now, and that other side of when you just hang on. And when you do hang on, you come back stronger. You see it all. You may or may not have seen it, but I've seen it so many times now when people just hang on, they just get through there, and it's absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Describe it.
Yeah. I know. I think it feels like the Rise of Superman. It feels like you're injected with this chemistry. You feel like Superman. It's like you're a real life superhero. It's like you take off whatever you're wearing, you get into your little lycra bloody Superman suit, and away you go. And it comes from nowhere. And you could be, I know in my experience, the Hurt 100, which we were just discussing, I mean, it took me 34 and a half hours. And you just, you haven't been asleep. You're in a world of hurt, but something comes along, and away you go. It's yeah, I don't know.
Is it almost like you're possessed, or something takes over, or you let go? And
I was going to say,
it really, yeah. No, sorry, Karen. I remember a friend of mine who was a commando in the military, and he said to me, when you talk about being present and being conscious of what is going on, I 100% agree. You are all in. And I remember my friend of mine said to me, "Oh, mate, come on, you can do this. It's mind over matter." And it stuck out to me. And I remember thinking, mind over matter. I've heard that bloody quote so many times, mind over matter, let the mind take over. Now, it's mind over matter when you're comfortable. Like now, I'm sitting in my office at the gym, the aircon's on, I'm talking to three lovely ladies. It's easy to sit back and say, yeah, it's mind over matter. Just got to be mentally tough. You just got to be tougher, especially for blokes. You just got to be tougher. You just got to, give it a squeeze and carry on, this type of stuff. But I tell you, when you're in the thick of it, and when you are right in the middle of whatever it is you're doing and you can't see a way out, you are so present. It is not funny. You can't think about what happened 2 days ago. You can't think about what you're having for dinner tomorrow night. You can't think about anything other than what is going on and the pain you're experiencing at that very moment. And you can't see a light out of the tunnel, but something inside you screams to you to hold the fuck on. Just hold on. Hold on. But and I don't know. I don't. I've got to be very careful here, but I would imagine in my masculine male state, it could be similar to perhaps childbirth. If somebody came into the room whilst you were giving birth and said, "Oh, come on, Kimmy, it's mind over matter. Just let your mind take over. It's mental toughness."
We would probably grab them by the throat and
there we go.
Tell them where to go.
Yeah, I could imagine, dead man walking. You'd have more chance of flying in the air than getting out of there alive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
I've seen those movies. I've seen that up on the movies.
Yeah, but that is the parallel. As I said, as somebody who has no idea what that experience is like. You can't visualize anything. You can't see out of there. You are just in the pit. You're in the darkness. You're in the deep black hole, and you feel everything. Absolutely everything. But you just got to keep going, and something screams at you to hold on. when everything else, you're just every cell, every muscle, every tendon, every thought process just tells you it's time to stop. Get me out of here. Get me out of this shit fight. And something deep inside, then this is where my curiosity lies. Something deep inside just says, you just hang in there a little bit longer and I'll take it from here. And it's pretty special. Whew, I don't think I took a breath. Oh, maybe gosh.
It's pretty interesting because we see these scenarios occur with people. You know, we've heard of mums lifting cars off children,
yes.
or you know, someone like Karen, even, you know, she's still probably, I don't know if I can say this on your behalf, Karen, but that, you know, climbing that 10-foot wall, like how you did that. And sometimes when we're put under the biggest adversity or the biggest challenges, that Superman or Wonder Woman comes out. And I do wonder what that is. I mean, Karen, have you heard of the switch or what it is that occurs in people for this?
Yeah, well, you know, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but there are hundreds of thousands of people who speak of this almost out-of-body experience. And my language for it is that the me that's here now is not the me that's there at the time. And, you know, the human instinct for survival, well, there's nothing human about that. It's actually become superhuman, because the me that's 5'2" could never climb a 10-foot wall, could never break open a apple box by myself with my bare hands, you know, could never do the things that I did. But the me that was present during the bombing, you know, when I was orchestrating my escape, was 1,000,000 feet tall, 30 feet wide, bulletproof, and was God Almighty himself. So, you know, when I think of the me that was present in those moments, I'm in awe of it. And, you know, as much as that took me a while to get to that realization and to get to that understanding where I got beyond the self-pity, I think, to what the truth actually was, that's when I realized that this doesn't just happen to me. This has happened for millions and millions and millions of people, where they get to experience themselves as beyond the them that they believe that they are. And that's why I was so fascinated about this, Jamie, because it's almost like you use your training and you use your fitness and all of the challenges that you put yourself through. You use that to get to that state. And I think that's profound, because I think most people would give anything to exist in that state perpetually. Most people would give anything to be able to experience that at will. I know.
Yeah, look, that's pretty powerful. I think we're at a time we're ready. I think society, I think people, we're ready. We're ready for knowledge. We're growing. We're learning. We want to know more about the unknown. I mean, especially in my industry. I mean, we measure everything. You know, how fast can Cindy O'Meara run 5 kilometers? You know, how much can Kim Morrison back squat? How much can Karen Smith deadlift? You know, we measure everything. Everything is tangible. It's black and white. It's like, it's 100 kilos, or Cindy runs the 5K in 18 and a half minutes. I mean, we've got all this tangible details. I'm so fascinated by what we're talking about, the non-tangible, the invisible. I mean, sports science, sports psychology, exercise, physiology, we've been measuring this stuff for a very, very long time, these tangible things. We are now increasingly more curious about the stuff we can't measure. And I don't know if we'll get there in our lifetime or my lifetime, but I think we're on the cusp of getting to know a little bit more, and people are fascinated. We're fascinated by the human spirit. We're fascinated about you know, being conscious, being present. We're fascinated.
I think also it's almost like a miracle. And, you know, you've heard of miracles that happen and you hear about them all over the world. But I think the man that had created the most amount of miracles was Jesus Christ. And no matter whether you think he was the Son of God or who he was a man, and he created these miracles that, bringing Lazarus back from the dead, the loaves and fishes. And like, people might think that's a religion thing, but that's a man who was able and capable of achieving great things. And he was taken to the ultimate of his physical as well. So, to explain a miracle, because that's what's called a miracle, because there is no explanation to it. And I think about Karen and her running for her life and how she survived that when her two friends right next to her didn't. How that's a miracle. How did that happen? Great. And how you did what you did. Jamie, listening to you, like, I'm trying to think, when have I taken myself to the brink? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever taken myself physically to the brink. I love to hike. I hiked for 2 months as a 19-year-old through snow and ice, but I never thought I went through the brink. I thought, I can do this. I've done 3 days solo, but I don't know if I've taken my physical body to the point where I know that you and Kim have taken it and Karen have taken it.
Cindy, they talk about flow. That amazing author, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he talks about it in his book called Flow, the something optimal experience. And they talk about it being on the edge of skill and capability. So when you've taken your body to the edge, when you've taken yourself to the very end, it's only there that you find that flow. And I just wonder if that's the same kind of thing. Well, I don't know. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know that it is. But I wonder if, when we're just doing what we love to do and what we can do, that's one thing. But when we do go to the brink, when we do go to our edge, we discover that the edge is so much further away. We still have so much more.
I think
we only go to 40%, as Jamie said.
Apparently.
Oh,
dear.
Yeah, I know. I feel ill every time I think, it's got to be more than 40. Surely I've scratched another couple of percent. Surely, I think with all said and done, I think discomfort has a massive role in it as well. I think when you're in pain, suffering, discomfort, facing the uncomfortable. I mean, funnily enough, the subheading of the documentary is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, which gets thrown around a lot at the moment. But again, it represents more than the actual physical activity. Initially I thought, that's a great heading for this ultra marathon. But to be fair, it's a great heading for life. Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations, speaking up for yourself, learning to say no, learning to, not people please and things like that, learning to be honest when, everything inside you screams to tell your friend, you look great in that dress, when really you want to say, Jesus Christ, have you considered the red one? It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is, a narrative for life. And I think in that discomfort is where we get to experience a taste of some of what we were talking about. Perhaps that's my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're a humble man, and just quickly tell us what your world record is in.
Oh God, yeah. And by the way, anyone is welcome to this. If they hear this and they think, "Oh, geez, I could do that," they are more than welcome. Where were we? 2013, maybe. I think got the world record for the most amount of burpee broad jumps. So I did 4,267 and travelled a distance of 8.5 kilometres over 22.5 hours up in Cairns Esplanade in summer, which was a really poor logistical organisational part on my behalf.
Did you pass out?
Quite normal.
Oh no! Look, I don't think I think I do have a bit of PTSD or something. I've got this little twitch since doing it that I'm not. I don't think I've fully recovered. No, I I'd never been sick from exercise before. I'd seen guys in the military, throwing up and carrying on, and I'd never experienced vomiting or nausea induced from excessive exercise. But that particular event managed to, I just didn't think I could possibly bring up anything else. But I had just an abundance of stuff, fluids, bodily stuff. Just kept coming. Yeah, sorry. But
hey, Jamie, so that's that, and you've also attempted to do the most number of pull-ups in 24 hours. Is that something that's still on the radar?
10th of August, I have my reattempt. I'm a big believer in, when you make a mistake, it's a mistake, and I've had take one, which was last year at the Sunny Plaza. I made the mistake in doing it in front of the greater Sunshine Coast community, which seemed like a good idea at the time. Didn't mind a few bright lights and flashing lights at the Sunny Plaza, but this time I'm going to take a more humble approach and do it at the gym. But on the 10th of August, we'll have another punt.
Oh, well, we loved coming to see you all through the night, darling. And
you're amazing.
Oh, I think you're an incredible trainer, and I love your spirit. And that's something, the word I'd love to bring up with you and share is maybe you could tell us about the dates of the documentary, and then this beautiful, phenomenal ngahi that you're bringing out from New Zealand. But what I'd love to lead into that is a word that I wrote about in my book, and it's a New Zealand word, it's a Maori word, and that's mana. And when I think of the word mana, there is no other description for it. I can't describe it in the English language, but what I do appreciate of it is that it's seen as a supernatural force in a person, place, or object. And it basically means that it's the enduring, indestructible power of the Atua, which is God. Can you explain to us about Ngahi and how I'm sure he has truckloads of mana and why you want to bring him here?
Oh, where do I start? I'm in agreement with you. I don't know if there is a vocabulary to explain a word that can explain my brief encounter with Ngahi. I've seen Tony Robbins a couple of times. I've seen other amazing speakers, of which Kimmy, you're obviously one of my favourite. I haven't seen Cindy or Karen speak yet, but Ngahi left an imprint on me. My life will never be the same, and I mean that sincerely. And I spent no more than 15 minutes with him, literally. And he was a man that stood probably similar to you, Karen. And in fact, the way you were describing your experience with the Bali bombing and how you said you were 5'2", and then all of a sudden, over the 10-foot wall. And this was a man who would be similar stature, 5'2", and he commanded a room like he was 11 foot. He was a tiny, small Maori man with a tāmoko, which is a traditional Maori tattoo on his face. And I won't go through the whole story, but he was an integral part of the documentary to give people an insight into Maori, who Maori people are, and what Wairua Spirit, or what spirit means to us as Maori. And he spoke into the camera without taking his gaze away from the camera lens, unscripted, no lines, no nothing, and spoke for 12 minutes. And oh my God. And I stood there watching this, and I felt so moved, so emotional. This man was so powerful and profound. And his message was so simple, and I was getting overwhelmed with emotion. And I looked over at Nick, the cameraman, and he was weeping. I looked over at my uncle, who's not an emotional guy, and he's weeping. The guy holding the lights, he's weeping. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for you three blokes, I'm crying too. So I start crying, and there's four of us, and he just, I can't begin to explain. He said three very simple things to me, and again, I thought it was in relation to the ultra marathon, and as it turns out, as time's gone on, it's good advice for life. And he said three Maori words for three Maori phrases. He said, kia kaha, which most of us know means be strong. Kia maia, which means be courageous. And kia manawa nui, which means be steadfast. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's that. I'm going to hang on to that like a lifeline. That's my lifeline for this ultra marathon, of which it was. It was a driver for me. It helped me. It was like, just hang on, Jamie. Be courageous. Don't quit. Be steadfast. And then after the event, after 34 hours of running and, in the darkness and the rain with no company and no music, I realized that was the exact message that I needed to hear at 40 years of age of how I conduct myself in my life and in my business and my community and in amongst society. I need to be brave. I need to be courageous, and I need to be steadfast. And I got all of this from a 5'2" Maori elder who spoke to us for 12 to 15 minutes. This man changed my life. It's as simple as that.
Well, I hope you can give us the link, because I know many of our listeners would travel to come and hear him. And I know that the three of us are super keen. I'd love my children to hear him. Can you tell us the dates of the screening of your documentary, and also when Ngāhi is coming to the Sunshine Coast?
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kimmy. Thank you for sharing this amongst your platform and listeners. I appreciate it. The documentary, the premiere is on the 29th of April. I literally think we're about 90 to 95% sold out for that night. And then we have the 30th of April at the big screen cinemas in Caloundra. And then we are fortunate to have the pleasure of Ngāhi presenting his keynote on the 1st of May at Condalilla Eco Resort up in Montville in their new restaurant. And we have 50 tickets available for Ngāhi. So it's an intimate presentation, and we're about 50% sold. But we would love any of your listeners and yourselves to come and experience this amazing human being.
And so how do our listeners actually get hold of their tickets, Jamie? Where would you suggest we send them? What's the link?
Probably the best place is to jump on the website Wairua Spirit, spelled Wairua, and then the word spirit, wairuaspirit.com, and you can get your tickets there. But I can share the link with you guys also after this conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've got it, and I'll put it on the show notes. So that's exciting. I'm booking in for the 1st of May, and I'm going to the movie. So there you go. You got another ticket sold.
Yay!
Oh, look at you! Yay! There we go.
I'm not missing that. That will be amazing.
It will be phenomenal, girls. Jamie, can I just say, I know we've come to the end of our podcast. If there was a parting message that you would have for our listeners, their partners, their family, their community, what would Jamie Milne want to instill upon all of us?
Oh, just closing on a nice, simple question. Yeah. Look, I love the simple. I think nowadays with the internet and with the social media platforms and the complexity of life, I do my utmost, even in the fitness industry, to simplify things. So take the complexity out of things and simplify things. So I would part this conversation with the simple suggestion or encouragement to just do the right thing. That's all. Just simply do the right thing. Sometimes we don't necessarily know what the right thing is to do, but I can assure you we know what the wrong thing is, because you get this little feeling in your stomach and you think, oh, that's not such a great idea. And it can be anything from making sure you indicate at the roundabout to making sure that if you were shortchanged in a cafe or anything, give the money that was the correct amount. Just do the right thing. Tell the truth. Be honest, be integral, be steadfast, be courageous, all those things. Just do the right thing. That's it.
Oh, you're all of those things, and we adore you, and we're so grateful to have you here on the Sunshine Coast. So on behalf of the three of us, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure to interview you. We love you dearly. You're an incredible human being, and your endurance is something to be reckoned with, and certainly inspirational for all of us travelling this thing called life, our own ultras. And I think your messages have been incredibly strong and beautiful. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much, ladies. I'm truly honoured and feel very grateful to share this space with you all. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome, Jamie. It's been an amazing show.
Awesome.
So for all of our listeners, hopefully you guys have gotten as much out of today's podcast show as we have. We have just loved every moment of inspiration with our Jamie. Head on over to the website that is in the show notes if you're out taking a run, doing the grocery shopping or vacuuming or working, whatever it is that you're doing. Make sure that you go to the website, wairuaspirit.com, and grab your tickets, and also check out Jamie's documentary and grab your seats there if there are any seats left by the time you get there, because us three have just taken 3 as well. Just saying. So if you guys have got any questions or any comments for Jamie or about today's show, head on over to allthews.facebook.com/up for a chat. You can also go over to allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up for a chat and post your comments or questions right there. In the meantime, make sure that you stick it in your diary to come and join us here same time, same place next week right here on Up for a Chat, where you get to become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And we are so going to see you on the ride. Bye for now, everybody.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.